Hi and welcome to this course CI/CD with GitHub Actions and Docker. What we will do inside this course, we will see that tests can not only be run locally, but they are an important part of any CI/CD pipeline. Of course, we will see what a CI/CD pipeline is, but more importantly, we will configure a lot of great technologies that are very in demand today. We are talking about GitHub Actions, we will configure it and we will create pull requests, we will break them, we will fix them, and then we will test databases locally with Docker, and then in the end we will test database operations on a pipeline with Docker and GitHub Actions. What are the requirements for this mini course? Well, you need a GitHub account, you need to have Git configured locally, and you need to have Docker installed locally. I will use some very basic code inside this mini course, but all the source code is available in the repository in the description. Also inside the description you will get an awesome full TypeScript testing course at a discount price. This being said, let's get to work. So what is CI/CD? Well, if we would give a simple definition, it would be a method to frequently deliver applications to our customers. The keyword in this definition is automation. This is the one, automation, and CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous delivery. Well, what does this even mean? Well, we as developers, we write code, and that code needs to be built, to be tested, and then to be merged. In the end, it should be released and deployed to production. Let's say that these first two steps right here are a part of integration and the last two steps are a part of deployment. This is just in a few words a very complex topic which you will understand a lot better by practice. And we will practice it by using GitHub Actions inside this course. GitHub Actions is a great solution for CI/CD and for all kinds of automations. It is a solution to automate developer workflows, and one of that workflow is the CI/CD automation along many other automations. And talking about GitHub Actions, let me switch to the browser to my GitHub account and show you how we can use it. I will start fresh with a new repository and I will show you exactly what you need to know in order to use CI/CD with GitHub Actions. The only thing you need to have configured is an existing GitHub account. So let me switch to the browser. I'm inside my GitHub account and I will click create a new repository. I will give it the name CI/CD practice. I will initialize this with a README file and I will add a gitignore for node. I will create this repository and I will go to code and I will just clone this repository locally inside my computer. So now I will go inside my computer and here I will start a terminal. Again, you need to have GitHub configured locally. So here I'll say git clone and this URL, and I will open this with VS Code, and this is basically our empty project. Let's make this a node project, so I will start a terminal right here and call npm init-y, and we just observe right here the script test. This will be important later. Well, in order for us to use actions, I will switch back to the browser. In order for us to use actions inside the browser, you can go to the actions tab right here. And here you will see a lot of already existing configurations for all kinds of workflows. Let's say all kinds of workflows, everything or anything you do in IT, there should be a workflow for you. I will just select a simple node application. This is the one, the node.js. I will click configure And all we need to do right here, the GitHub will tell us to do that we need to have a .github folder inside our project. That folder should contain a workflows folder, and that workflows folder should contain some YAML files. I will just copy this and configure this myself. So I will go to my editor right now, and here I will create a new folder, .github. Here I will create yet again another folder called workflows, and here I will create a new file. I will call this node.yml, or you can give any name you like to this file. Alright, and here I will paste whatever we have right here, and let's quickly inspect this file. This very important entry right here, on, and this on entry will configure the moments in time or the events which will trigger a new run of this CI/CD pipeline. On, for example, a push event on the main branch, or a pull request for the main branch. This will happen inside this main branch. I will leave it like this for the moment. And as you can see, this will run on Ubuntu latest. Let's just say right here that we want the node version only to be 18.x. We don't need other versions. So here I will only select, I will let right here only the node version 18. And as you can see, this will just check out our project right here, and it will simply run npm build and npm test. I will remove this step, we don't need it. It will run an npm clean install and npm test. Let me save everything and let me commit this. So I will say right here, add workflows. I will commit and push this. And now if we go to our browser, inside the actions entry, you'll see this new workflows right here. We have a new workflow run right here. If we wait a few seconds, okay, it's failed. Why is that? Oh, it requires a package-log.json file. No problem. We need to install everything, or we just need to make this an npm install. Let me call npm install right here locally to have a package-log.json file. Let me commit this, and let's observe the new run. Every time I commit, we should have a new run right here, a new workflow, and this one should work. Alright, this is still failing because we have an error log, but this is what we expected. Well, the important thing is that our actions are configured properly for the moment. I will pause the video right here and add some tests, and I will install Jest and TypeScript and everything. You will have this in the description. You will have all this repository inside the description and as a resource for this lecture. And in the next lecture, we will play around with the test from Jest inside GitHub Workflows. Before starting this lecture, I have configured this minimal project to have some minimal unit tests with Jest, and for us to be able to see them in the GitHub Actions view. What I exactly did, and let me tell you, this is all available for you as a resource and in the description. I have added these development dependencies to our project: Jest, ts-jest, and the types for Jest, because we are using Jest with TypeScript. I also need ts-node and TypeScript. I also added of course, I've configured this script test to use Jest. I have added a minimal tsconfig file for us again to work with Jest. And then I have added a Jest configuration file. This file configures or tells our Jest runner to look for source code in the source folder in the app, and for test code in the source folder /test. This is the way this minimal application will be configured, and again it will only run files that end up with test.ts. And then I have created in the source folder two subfolders, the app and the test. The app contains a very simple service, a function that returns a simple string, and the test folder contains a very simple test that runs this function. Let's see if this is working currently. Npm test. And yes, this implementation works. So let me commit and push this implementation, and let's see it inside the GitHub Actions view. So I will commit everything and I will call this add tests with jest. I will commit and push this. And let's see the GitHub Actions view. Wait a little and we will see a new workflow right here, and this time it should be green. Let's wait and see. And yes, things are finally green with our implementation. If we look at this, we will see this new job completed. It's our build, and as you can see here, we see all our steps. Even in our npm test, we can see exactly the output that we also saw locally. What I want to do right now is to create a new branch from our main branch and create a pull request and see how these pull requests look if we have these actions configured. So inside the view right here, I will create a new branch. I will say git checkout branch, and here I will say cool feature, something like this. All right, and now we are in a new branch called cool feature. And let me first break these changes, or let me break something. Let's say that this cool name will be very cool name, something like this. Very cool name. This will break everything. So I will commit this. I will say right here break tests. I will commit this, and I will also publish this branch. Now in my GitHub view, if I will move to the GitHub view, I will go to this project. And as you can see, here I will see that I have a new branch called cool feature, and that this branch had pushes. I will create a pull request for this branch. And as you can see, we want to merge this cool feature branch inside the main branch right here. And this took the name from our first commit. Let me just write here, do stuff, doesn't really matter. Let me just create this pull request. And because we have this create pull request, you'll see that now, because inside our GitHub workflows, right here, we have also this event on pull request for the main branch. Then when we are creating pull requests for the main branch, we will have this new check right here. It will always run this check, this GitHub Actions check. It will run the tests in the background, and as you can see, we will see that all the checks have failed because our tests have failed. And as you can see, I can either close this pull request or comment. I can't merge this pull request. Let's fix this pull request. So in order to fix this, I will also update the test. If we are expecting a very cool name, let's see that our expected is a very cool name. Let me call locally npm test and see if this fixes the tests. Yes, this fixes the tests. So here I will say right here fix tests. I will commit and push this. Now the check will be run again. If we go back to our view right here for our pull request, you can see we have this commit right here, and we have a red X right here. This means that this indicates that this commit broke the build. But if we have a new commit which should fix the tests, let's wait a little and see. Yes, now this commit is fixing the build, so everything should be all right. If I will just refresh this page for Git to be able to view that now this commit and this branch is not breaking anything, now I can simply merge this pull request. I will confirm this merge, and I even can delete this branch right now, and everything is alright. Because at this point, because we have tests and because we have a pipeline that run the tests when we have pull requests or commit inside the main branch, then we can know for sure that we don't break anything. This is the beauty of CI/CD pipelines. You know, we have this all these kinds of new ways in which we can trigger tests remotely. Well, let's take things to the next level, and let's get rid of these dump examples with service and service.test. Let's move on to the next lecture and run some real database tests against a real database. We will see this in the next lecture. Let's now talk about how we can access our database for testing purposes. And let's say that we are building a big application. Well, usually these kind of applications have very secure databases, of course, and in order for us to write queries for that database, the access for us in order to test those queries is very secure and very hard to configure, as it should be, because databases should be very secured. Well, how we can test our queries or our database operations? Well, we can use a simple local test database, and even in this case we have two options. A complicated option would be to configure a real database implementation, which depending on the database version should be easy or really complicated. I have worked with both. But a more simple solution to this, lately we have this great technology, this great framework called Docker, and we can use Docker to have a version of a database which can be very easy to start once it is configured inside a Docker command or a Docker file, even better. And the great thing about a Docker database is that it also works with CI/CD. This is the reason I have chose to talk about Docker in this section about CI/CD. Well, as I said, as developers, we want to test our database queries, and we have these three options. We have a real testing database, which should be hard and complicated to access. We have a local test database, and we have a third option, a Docker test database, which can also be accessed by a CI/CD pipeline. Let's proceed in this lecture, and let's see an example with MongoDB. I chose MongoDB because it is a more popular solution lately, but you can adapt this example to any database of your choice. Docker has all the databases implementations, or most popular databases can also be used inside Docker. So let me switch to the IDE. I'm inside my IDE, and let me configure a code that accesses a Docker database. I will pause the video and then I will explain it. Alright, I have wrote the implementation for Docker, and let me explain it. Well, I have created this class called database connector, and what this class does, by using MongoDB, this one right here, let me also install it as a package. I will call npm install MongoDB. This is a driver for a MongoDB connector. Alright. The important thing right here is this database URI and database name. This is the way we can connect to a Mongo database, and this my database is very important. I will show in a moment when we will start it on Docker. And basically what this class does, you don't have to understand everything inside this class. This is just a custom implementation for a MongoDB example. What this class does, by using this database URI, it will connect to, it will create a MongoDB client, this one right here, and by using this client we will connect to the database, and then we can make different operations to the database. We can get a collection, and using this client we can add users, we can get users, or we can get all users. The MongoDB implementation suggests that when we are inserting an element, we are returned back the element ID. It will generate an ID for our element, and this is what we will return inside this add user function. Well, the next level of abstraction over this class, or this file is not a class, these are some functions, is this class which I called users access. And this is usually the way in which we can test database operations. The advantage of having this abstraction right here is that with Jest or with any other testing framework, we can mock this DB connection return types, and we can still write tests for our database implementations. But usually these tests are not very meaningful because queries usually tend to be very complicated. Tests will be very complicated and will sometimes not give us the whole truth. A great way to test databases is not just mock them, but use a real version or a version as close to reality as possible. And basically this is what we will do inside this lecture. I have wrote a test. This is more like a functional test. We don't have any mocks right here. We are using the real deal right here. Basically I'm importing this user's access right here. And before all, we were creating a new user's access and we are connecting to the database. And then these tests are like a sequential tests. We are inserting a user and then we are querying for that user inside the database right here after we have this user ID. In the end, after all the tests are done, we are closing the database connection. Well, I said that in order to use this, we need to have Docker installed. So in order to have this, you need Docker. I can say right here, Docker version. And you can see that I have this Docker version. Now let me pull a MongoDB image. And I can simply call Docker pull Mongo. Alright, I already had it pulled and this worked very fast for me. If this is the first time for you, it will take a few seconds, but not too much. And now I have this Mongo latest image. This example is very simple, so I won't even have a Docker file. We will just simply use what we have. So I will clear this and now let's start this database. I will say right here, Docker container run -- name, and this is very important. I will call this my database, and this my database should match this my database right here as a connector, as a database URL right here. And for Mongo, usually the convention is to use port 27017. So here I'll say publish 27017 27017 -d, and finally we say that we want to run this image. I will click on enter, and now if I will call docker ps, you will see that we have this container ID. This image is called Mongo, and we have the name my database. And at this point our test should be able to run if I don't have any typos right here in the URI. So here I'll say npm test. And alright, our tests are working just fine. Again, everything is available for you as a resource for this lecture, but keep in mind that when we are making this test, we are accessing a real version of our database. And this is a great way in which we can test our queries by using Docker. Let's proceed into the next lecture and do everything that we did right now. Let's do it also inside our pipeline. If we look now at our workflow, you'll see that our local DB testing with Docker, of course, it fails because, of course, this database that we configured locally doesn't exist inside our pipeline. So let's fix this, and the fix will be very simple. We just need to instruct the GitHub workflow to also configure Docker locally. And the beauty about this is that we will use the exact same Docker commands. We just need to add a few steps. So for this, we will go inside our workflows right here, inside our node.yml right here. And as I said, we simply need to add a few more steps for us to use Docker. So I will add a new step right here. After we are using these actions checkout, we should also configure Docker. So right here, I will add a new step. Let's give it a name. I will say right here, build Docker Mongo image, and this will simply run, and this will just run our Docker command. So here I'll say docker pull mongo right here, and then we simply need a new step. I will just copy and paste this one because I'm lazy, and the name of this next step will be this run docker mongo container, like this. And the command will be the one that we used before. Let me find it. This is the command that we used inside the last lecture. I will simply copy this and run it right here. Save this. Let's commit this and see if now our build will be green. So right here, add docker to workflow. Alright, I have committed this and pushed. Let's observe the workflow right now. We should have a new entry, a new action. Let's wait a little. Well, and the action is green. That's great. If I will open this, you'll see that now our workflow also has Docker configured. If we look at this build, you'll see that we are seeing the logs for building the Docker image. The image is pulled and even verified, and also we are running this image, and then all our tests, our real database tests, are able to run against a real database instance on Docker inside a GitHub workflow pipeline. That's great. And with this lecture, we come to the conclusion of this section. We saw how we can configure GitHub Actions with tests, how we can test locally database queries using Docker, and how we can use Docker to test those queries remotely on a CI/CD pipeline.